Morning, Coach. We'll get started with Les and then John.
Sorry. Hey, Dave. So interesting day for the special teams. Sunday, you had the blocked field goal by Derek Barnett, and you also had Greg let that punt bounce down to the 2, and some other. You had another return against that kind of hurt. How did you feel it went overall, and given the weather conditions and everything you were facing?
Yeah, no, I'd say it's probably much like any game. I mean, there's some good, some bad, and obviously a lot of plays we'd like to have back in this building. We're really critical of ourselves. I thought we could have helped our team by making some plays we didn't out there and whatnot. Obviously, we did help the team with the block field goal. That was a positive. But I think from my shoes, you're always being critical of yourself. The bottom line is winning the football game. We didn't win, and I think you always feel like your phase that you're responsible for has a part in that. I certainly do with our performance on Sunday.
What with the punt that before the safety, what did Greg? Should Greg? It's in the driving rain and he has to run up on it, I guess. But should he have tried to catch that? You think?
I think there are a lot of factors to that. I think if you look closely at it, it's going to be a high risk catch. I don't think the guy had a lot of hang time on the ball, so it was a little bit low trajectory. I think it was like 3.8 seconds, which some of those punts are like 4.5. I think it didn't go very far, went 35 yards. I think it bounced at like the 13-yard line. It was obviously really wide out there. We had a corner out there wide on top of the gunner. The gunner's out there. So, I mean, his first job, is to try to make sure those guys get away from the football. I thought he did a really good job of that. I thought it would have been a high-risk catch, trying to go in there and catch it. Obviously, the footing's slick. You want to make sure in the rain that you have a little bit extra time to make sure you secure the ball. Goal number one for us on that play is to give the ball back to the offense. You obviously don't want the ball to roll like that, especially in hindsight, of course. I thought maybe we could have done a better job of maybe getting on top of the ball and squaring it up. It did take a high bounce right there, and maybe we could have caught the ball after the bounce, and I don't think we would have got any return yardage. We would have had to protect the ball from the gunner, who would have been right on top of us, but maybe we could have eliminated the roll there and gotten the ball back to the offense on the 8-yard line. Something like that, I would say. It's easy to say that today. There's some risk in doing that. Obviously, that position back there, you're managing a lot of risk. That's a tough position to be in. There's a lot of responsibility on the guy's shoulders. I think overall, I think Greg's done a good job of, he's minimized the real negative plays against our team, obviously. I think with the experience, being back there more, I'm sure there's things that he would do differently today than he's done in the past, just like all of us. And then I would say just being critical of myself at the end of the day, I got to do a better job of coaching them up and preparing them for all those situations. And I could do a better job of that also.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John, and then Mike.
Hey, Dave, good morning. When you talk about punt returns and you have a game like that, a weather game, I guess the wind wasn't that terrible, but the driving rain is ball security when you make that decision. Is it going to be Greg, Jalen? Is that more of a consideration in that type of environment?
Yeah, I think in that type of environment, the first thing you do want to do is make sure you take care of the football. Obviously, the ball's a little slicker, the footing's slicker. You got to make sure you secure the catch first. You got to be a little bit more deliberate about the catch in those games. I think if you watch those guys in pregame warm-up, both sides put the ball on the ground a little bit at the returner position. But I would say that's a factor in it. In terms of putting Greg and Jalen back there, there's a lot of things that go into those decisions. Obviously, at the end of the game, we did put Jalen back in there when they were punting in that backed-up situation, their last punt of the game. So we did have him out there. Obviously, Fair caught that ball, but everything's a factor. Weather's certainly a part of it, but I wouldn't say that was the only reason that Jalen wasn't back there on some of those earlier punts. We'll continue to probably work both those guys throughout the year.
Go ahead, Mike, and then Bo.
Hey, Dave. Rick Lovato is, I think he's leading the league in tackles for a long snapper. And he seems to be always heavily involved in the scrums. Do you have to kind of, manage his aggressiveness just because losing a long snapper we've seen in the past in the middle of a game can be kind of disastrous?
Yeah, no, we don't play for the what if that happens. Obviously, we know that injury is a part of the game. Obviously, we don't wish that on anybody, but he's got a job in protection, which he's done a nice job of, and then he's also got a responsibility in coverage, which is kind of down the middle of the field, which is where you're seeing him show up, and he has done a nice job of his coverage responsibility. So no, we don't. I mean, it's just a part of the game.
Bo and then Jeff.
Dave, how often, throughout the week, throughout the year, is Jake just sort of fiddling with ideas for onside kicks and how to get that ball to pop?
Yeah, I would say we play around with a lot of different ideas. Obviously, it's a difficult play right now. I think everybody in the league's been trying to figure out a way to get the deck stacked a little bit more in their favor. But that was a kick that we had been working for a little while. I mean, he's always tinkering around. I think all those kickers everywhere I've been, or every kicker I've been around, is always kind of playing around with onside kicks and trying to see if they can't come up with something different. I think everybody's been doing that around the league. Obviously, yeah, I felt good about some things about the play, but obviously the goal on that play is to come up with the football at the end of the thing, and we didn't get that done there.
Jeff and then Ed.
Dave, last week when we spoke to you, you said that Jalen Rager should have fielded that long punt, and then when we spoke to him later, he seemed to indicate that if he caught it that far, it would have been about the same as it ended up being. I'm just wondering what your interpretation of that is, and is the message getting across to him?
My interpretation of his interpretation?
Well, yes. I mean, he said basically the opposite of what you had told us.
Oh no, I feel great about being on the same page with Jalen. I'm not worried about that at all.
Go ahead, Ed, and then Zach.
Hey, Dave. Just to ask you about Alex Singleton. He's played every snap on defense the last 2 weeks. He's playing a pretty big load on special teams as well. Have you talked about maybe, kind of backing that off? And, how valuable of a player is he on special teams?
Yeah, no, he's done a great job for us. Obviously, he's been a four-core player for us this year. He did the same last year for us when he's been up. I know his role on defense has changed a little bit. Those guys' roles have fluctuated throughout the year. In the beginning of the year, he wasn't playing as much. Nate Gary was playing more. Obviously, there's been some injury at that position. I think there's been some adjustment in some of those guys' roles at that position also. But, no, we're happy with his performance for us, certainly. And we're going to try to use him as much as we can. That being said, we are always cognizant of how much those guys are playing. And we're going to try to make sure we keep them out of harm's way that way. But, for us, there's so many guys on game day, and you got to fill all the roles on special teams as well. When you take your punt return, kickoff return, there's 44 jobs out there that you got to fill. And obviously on game day, there's 48 players available to you. So somebody's got to take them.
We'll wrap it up here with Zach.
Hey, Dave, we've seen elsewhere in the past few weeks some kickers go on the COVID-19 reserve list. What contingencies do you have if that were to come up during the week for your specialists?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to get into all those specifically, but we certainly have a bunch of contingencies in place. Feel good about the guys we have and feel good about the backup plans. No backup plan's perfect. None of those guys are as good as the starter. Obviously, we hope it doesn't happen. We feel really good about the COVID protocols in the building and the way these guys have been disciplined off the field. I think that's as important as anything. I know the specialists have done a great job of, kind of limiting their contact outside the building. We talk about that and kind of, what they're doing, how much contact with other people they're having. And I know they're cognizant of that also. All three of those guys depend on each other. The snapper affects the kick, and the snapper affects the punt. The protection affects the punt, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, the punter affects the hold. So those guys all rely on each other. I think they feel like they have, they owe each other the right to stay safe outside the building. So they've done a good job with that, but we all know that it's not preventable 100%, and we're cognizant of that. We do have some contingency plans in place.
And so if I can just follow up quickly, are those contingencies internal, or obviously there's not a kicker or punter on the practice squad, so would it be possible even to have an external contingency plan?
Yeah, I would say we probably have both internal plans and external plans.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Thanks, everybody.